This is Paul Nobles from eatperform.com. I am sitting here with April Blackford. April, if you want to say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
So we haven't really had a chance to say this because we were kind of getting rolling a little bit late. But if you guys have any questions, go ahead and answer those right off the bat, because I think right now we have a pretty big class, and it looks like we'll probably end up getting about 60 or 70 people going. And so we'd like to be able to put our families to bed, get rolling with our life after this. So if we get going too late, oftentimes it'll roll over past 8 o'clock. And so there you go. But we do have 3 questions. Let me just take a look and see what everybody's saying. Well, first one is saying hi. Hello, Melissa. And someone else is saying, should I be seeing video yet? Yes, you should be seeing a video. Someone's saying can't see you. That's interesting. Let me see. Oh, here we go. There you go. I think I changed the setting and now they should be able to see. Let's see. Oh, they're still saying can't see video. Let's see. It's saying show my screen. Okay, there we go. Now they're saying that they can see me. Okay, good. They're here to see you though, April, not me. In your bar don't lie tank. You know.
This is going to be a limited edition one day.
Exactly. It is. It's a limited edition right now. You know, because there ain't no money in T-shirts. That's the problem with T-shirts. You know. But April, in case you guys don't know, April lives in Trap City. So there you go. So I'm just trying to think. Well, we had a couple interesting things happen. I think since the last meeting, we had the Wave Method book had come out. And so far, it's only been to lifetime members. We did start selling it to very, very new people. But we haven't really pushed that really hard, trying to get all of our regular folks up to speed with their performance-focused fat loss numbers and things of that nature. And in general, you know, we were able to get through hundreds of people in just a couple of days. So that's sort of a miracle. I mean, at one point, it was basically 4 people, you know, one of which was me, one of which was April, you know, and so to have, you know, a team of 10 people that can you know, help 300, 400 people within a couple days, that feels pretty special. Actually, April is on a team and I was on a team, and so we pretty much worked through 50 a day. I think it was, maybe it was 25 a day.
Well, I actually worked overtime this weekend and spent about 20 hours, and I am the one who single-handedly did all the rest of them.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, there we go. So,
because I was like, let me just get everybody taken care of and be done.
And that's, folks, why you go into business with someone who does not like leaving things on the table. That's probably a little bit why you're sick. Burning the candle at both ends. So let's see. Gina was saying there was actually a bunch of responses, but I'm not sure any of them were asking a question. But Gina was asking, is it bad to eat too much at night? I think that oh, okay, it's pronounced Jenna. So Jenna is asking. Jenna actually lives blocks away from my house, which is funny. But is it bad to eat too much at night? I wouldn't say that it's bad. In fact, you know, if you look at France or Argentina, you know, when I visited Argentina a few years back, I mean, you wouldn't even start eating till 10:30 at night. Like, restaurants weren't even open at 7 p.m., you know, which was crazy to me. Right? And so you'd have these gigantic steak meals at 10:30 at night, and then all of a sudden you go back to your room and you would sleep like a baby. You know, um, and that was a few years before Eat to Reform. But boy, that should have been a signal to me right there. Um, I don't think that it affects things dramatically, but I will say that if you do have a big meal, at night, and you're structuring your meals that way, you will often see the scale a little bit higher in the morning time. And then if, for instance, were doing something where you were delaying breakfast a little bit or something like that, the lowest point of your scale might be later in the day. So that would be the only thing that I think it's affected. um, the science behind it, and actually it is sort of interesting, the science behind why people used to recommend not eating a big meal at night. The idea is that when you eat a big meal at night, it causes your insulin to get rolling, and your insulin is an antagonist to like your human growth hormone and some repairing type stuff that goes on when you sleep, right? And so in theory, if your insulin's high, then you wouldn't get that recovery, and therefore you would retain fat. The problem with that is that in that exact same study, the people that did eat at night, while they did gain weight, they actually gained muscle. And so they ended up with less fat. And that was really underreported in that study, while people were reporting that study. And so, a lot of people remember that, Oprah clung on to that for a while. And Bob Greene, her trainer, was a big person for that for a while. And, there's still a lot of trainers that use that science kind of, in an incorrect fashion. Some of the speculation on why you actually retain your muscle better when you eat later at night. And first of all, I don't think it's so much the eat later at night part. I think it's eat an adequate amount. But kind of what I was suggesting with the steak, when you sleep deeper, you actually, part of, the repair that happens when you sleep is related to your REM cycles. And so if, as an example, you go to bed hungry and you wake up at 4 a.m. and you normally should have woken up at 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., well, certainly that wouldn't be good for fat loss either, right? And so the theory behind why you retain more muscle is that you get deeper sleep, and even though it takes a little bit longer for your repair to happen, your body does figure it out. And because your sleep ends up being deeper, I don't think anyone would argue that, carbs, especially, the serotonin-melatonin connection is benefited from carbohydrates. And, when a lot of people start doing the opposite of what they've been told for years, what they find is they get that like drool on the pillow sleep, and it's just kind of a life changer. And so that's the thought process there. There really isn't a lot of science. Now, I will say this, some people do struggle having a big meal, and I think it's largely independent. I don't eat huge meals before dinner, or after dinner, but I do like to have some carbohydrates. Any insights on that, April? I know obviously for you, we have tons of people that eat carbs before bed, namely cereal, which is kind of the opposite of what everybody believes. Yet, those folks wake up, deeper sleep, they go to bed, the nutrients are on the outside of the cell, and then they go to the inside, which is sort of interesting. I haven't had my birthday cake protein for a while, so I haven't been able to do cereal for bed for a while, so I need to reorder some of that stuff.
So how has your sleep been without it?
Well, I still eat carbs,
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll still have sorbet or ice cream or something of that nature. I don't go to cereal that often. It's just not something. I will say, for the longest time, I used to talk about the fact that I didn't do RKTs and I didn't do Oreos. That has changed with Oreo Thins, man. Those things are really good. So I have to admit, I've started eating those a couple of nights a week. But
I am not on the Oreo train. I can say that. I actually agree with everything that you said. In all the responses, I do think it's personal preference. Some people just don't like, feeling overly full. For me personally, I'll generally save maybe close to 1,000 calories between dinner and my bedtime snack. Now, granted, I usually do dinner around 6 p.m. And I also have experimented that I find that I sleep deeper if I have something starchier before bed, like a sweet potato with dinner and maybe some cereal, versus I love the sorbet. Like I have some mango sorbet right now, but if I choose sorbet over cereal, I actually do not sleep as deep if I have the cereal for some reason. So, but I think it's personal preference. And ultimately, in my opinion, if you're sleeping deeper, your body is recovering better, and it's going to be much better for you in the long run, versus, if you're someone that's following some studies or some saying, Bob Green, whatever, don't eat past 7 p.m. I can't even tell you how many times I've been asked, is it really okay for me to eat past 7 p.m.? And I'm like, do you get hungry? Yes. Well, why don't you eat? Well, I've always been taught, don't eat past 7 p.m. And the first thing I ask is, how's your sleep? Oh, my sleep is shit. Well, okay, why don't you try eating past 7 p.m. or just not caring about the time and see how you do? And that's
that's the kind of thing that is like, that's one day's worth of research that can change your life. Now, did you say that sorbet makes you sleep deeper or less than the cereal?
Opposite. It actually, I do not sleep as deep and for as consistently as long. Whereas with cereal, I literally will fall out at, say, 10 o'clock and I'll sleep till 6 a.m. Like no disturbance, no anything, just dreams all night long.
I also have that exact same thing, because I do rely on sorbet more than I do cereal, but 100% the cereal is much deeper sleep than sorbet. So that's a shared experience from both of us. And I think, what we're talking about, you guys, should be sort of interesting because, you can look at research and you can look at all these different types of things, but when you think about it, you go, well, why do they call this the Science Lab? Well, the whole point of the Science Lab was that tens of thousands of people would show up and we would all share our experience. And so that's an example of how the sharing works. So Melissa's asking, I've been with ETP since June and I gained 10 pounds trying to get my macros right. Starting to see some definition. I've got PRs all over the place, which is awesome. But the pants I just bought are tight, assuming my body weight into panic mode, and this is temporary fluff. Does this sound right to you? Actually, it's not panic mode. Your body is actually doing exactly what it should be, right? Your body was, sort of inflexible. I'm assuming, from what you're saying, that you came from an under-eating background, which is why you gained a little bit of weight. Sort of seems logical, right? Now maybe 10 pounds, it's sort of funny because, we usually recommend people, try and stay in that 3 to 5 pound range. But, it sort of depends on how drastic you were, right? And what I think is interesting about what Melissa's saying really points to why the wave method is such a a good thing for a lot of people coming from her background. So basically what she's going to do is, obviously we're going to try and keep her weight stable and not gain any more weight. And you can address this with some level of carb cycling. But the hard part about summer is, one, you can do more, you tend to eat a little bit more flexibly, and so your weight will tend to be a little bit up, even though my calorie burn is really high training for the granite gains and stuff like that. I've seen my weight go up to 175, but normally I'm sitting around 172, but in Melissa's case, the whole point of Eat to Perform is to stabilize your body. And so what I'm hearing, from you, Melissa, is that your body actually wants to stabilize at 10 pounds higher, right? Your body wants to recover, so you can get to a point where you can use a performance fat loss phase and actually see some results. Part of the problem that most people have had is they've been dieting for so long. And actually, that may be a negative for you as well. A lot of people focus on the 3 months that we require, for people to stabilize their system. I'll tell you one thing, there's a lot of science that talks about that you need to recover. And so if I said to you, you're going to have to gain 10 pounds to recover so you can get to a point where your system would normalize, because what we're really talking about is health in general, right? What does true health look like? Well, true health means that you're eating an adequate amount for what you do. And then, we can address fat loss from there. And the nice thing about addressing fat loss from a fed state is that you can go in and out of these cycles, and then in the end, you'll land with a sustainable approach rather than this really drastic, approach that sort of lands you in this uncomfortable spot where you can't work out all that great and stuff like that. And so that's why, we think the WAVE method, I mean, if you've read it, basically, what we're talking about is the majority of the time you're not dieting. And so, for a lot of people, we sort of posted, I think somebody else is going to ask about it in a second here. So I'm gonna check that and see what they're saying. Can you comment on Melissa's situation if you have anything to add, April?
I think everybody's different, from what I've seen and from the people that I've worked with. Some people, normally it depends on their background, and it depends on just how long they actually were under eating. I've seen some people, only gain 3 pounds, and I've seen some people under eating for years and years and years, and they actually lose weight, in the beginning, which is, usually not very common. But, like what you said, Paul, she basically, her body is trying to heal itself. She's gained the 10 pounds. As long as she's stabilized, it's going to put her in a much, much better position to be able to focus on losing fat the right way. Now, what I've seen a lot of people who, once they start fueling their body efficiently, they feel normal. They actually know what it feels like to work out to, their maximum potential, and it feels great. They've never felt like this before. And from what I've seen, like with the performance focused fat loss, a lot of people are they don't want to diet. They're like, nah, I think I'm just going to hang out here for a while. I'm like, hey, that's perfectly fine. You can, hang out there as long as you want to, but just know that you're going to be in a much better position when you get to that point to, actually focus on dieting for a short period of time.
Well, I am sort of sensitive to Melissa's struggle because, and I know you are as well. I'm not suggesting that you aren't. But what I don't think that everyone understands is that you're supposed to feel a little fluffy, right? You're supposed to feel, when we talk about having cereal before bed, I mean, I guarantee you, I've posted a number of pictures where, I'm not as lean, in the evening as I am in the morning, and that's by design, right? What you're sending a signal to your body is, we're going to keep the tissue that we're earning in the gym. And so from Melissa's standpoint, certainly there is a little bit of recovery. Now, here's the interesting part. So she started in June, okay? Now, let's also be a little bit honest. No one starts on June 15th and they're perfect, from day one to now. And that's fine. It takes a little bit of adjustment. What a lot of people do early on is, they'll start to kind of play with the carbohydrates. They like the freedom of what we're doing. And so, they won't necessarily get it perfect, right? But in Melissa's case, as an example, let's say that she's gained 5 pounds of muscle, and we know that that's very common, right? Then let's say that, worst case scenario, she's gained 5 pounds of fat, right? That would be so easy to take off. When you talk about eating in a calorically restricted state or a low carbohydrate state, all you're really doing is drying out your body. Your muscles are not hydrated properly, and therefore you don't exercise well enough. It's sort of funny. I say that all the time. Even scientists, kind of struggle with the idea. And it's hilarious to me that people don't see that connection when, and they think, muscle hydration somehow involves water, um, yes, you need an adequate amount of water, but you also need carbohydrate for absorption, and you need sodium for absorption, and potassium to a certain extent, and a certain amount of electrolytes. And it's sort of funny that people want to think of it as more complicated than that. It really isn't. So let's say that she is up 5 pounds of fat as her body is sort of adjusted, right, to like this more correct way of doing things. 5 pounds of fat is like easy to deal with. I mean, you can deal with that, in a relatively short period of time. I would say in Melissa's case, if she's up 10 pounds, she should almost expect to lose, right around that amount in her first performance focused fat loss phase, right? And so not only will she get to where she ultimately wants to go, now some of that, of course, is how long have we been dieting? If you've been dieting since you were 12 years old, well then, we might have a little bit of a problem. But the fact of the matter is that, no matter where you're coming from, you'll have to fix it, and I don't, even though like 10 pounds seems like, that's sort of like the outlier of what we would recommend. It's highly individual, and it can be fixed relatively quickly. And I do think that the wave method provides like the end game, whereas previous to that, our prescription for deficits wasn't as clear to folks. I mean, we definitely had information out there. This, I think, says, okay, let's do this. Let's see how it feels. What happens in a lot of cases with performance-focused fat loss phases is people, like in the case of Melissa, right? So she's worked up her total daily energy expenditure, and let's say that she's been doing that for a couple months, and then we decide to do a performance-focused fat loss phase. Well, sometimes your body hasn't adjusted yet, and so let's say she only loses, 4 to 5 pounds. Well, if those 5 pounds are fat and she gained 5 pounds of muscle, then we're looking at a net equal, right? So no matter what, it would be a good thing. If you're not familiar, basically what we say is you take 8 weeks, and in that 8 weeks, you end on the 8th week, right? So however it ends, and that has a lot of advantages. One of the biggest advantages is when you are in a deficit, sometimes, you can play a lot of mental games with yourself and things of this nature. There are some up-regulations built in on what we talk about, so that's kind of important discussion as it relates to this. So that means that you're not just constantly down, down, down for 8 weeks, because that's not how your body works. And you will see a better result because of that. Let's see, Melissa's responding. She said, true, carbs scare the crap out of me, so I'm just starting to get those macros right. Yeah, and I mean, that's a little bit of the struggle. One of the things that we've kind of done, we've always, I would say for the last year and a half, we've given everybody a really good plan, but what we found was they weren't following the plan so well. And so we came up with a better approach. And if you're new, you've gotten that approach. And I'd say new meaning 4 to 5 months, where it used to be a spreadsheet, and then now it's just a plan, and it walks you through the weeks. Now, we'll say not everybody follows that plan. They tend to just jump to the top, and they will gain a little bit of weight. but that's okay too, but the slower and more gradual that you can do it, the better. So when Melissa's saying that she struggles with carbs and she's struggling with getting those macros right, it's best to take that a little slow, right? So your body can adjust, and so you don't end up gaining a bunch of weight because your cells are inflexible. When we talk about metabolic flexibility, what we're really talking about is your carbohydrate metabolism or your fat metabolism. And so if you've been going low fat for a long time and then you start adding fats in, well, it's going to take your body a while to adjust. Same thing with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates also require 4 carbon ions to process, right? And so they will, your body will hold a little bit more water when you have carbohydrates, which is one of the reasons why your muscles are more functional once you start using carbohydrates. And so it's that muscle function that you use for greater work capacity that ends up turning into protein turnover from your workouts, and then allows for lean tissue that you've been sort of neglecting for a while. So I hope that's helpful, but the end game is not, the repair portion, right? A lot of people get caught up in the end game is the repair portion. And I agree with April. I think that a lot of people get to a point where they're like, you know what? I've been dieting for a while. I'm just going to enjoy this. They like the body recomposition that they're having. I think in Melissa's case, it's still relatively new. We're talking about basically 2 months. So there's probably still an adjustment period. And I'd say, even 7 years into doing this stuff, I still learn something new, once a month. So yeah, I think you'll be surprised at how things start to change once your body is functioning a little bit more efficiently. So Chris asked, and this is sort of a play on what Melissa was asking, read what I posted about HRV and slot. Could it speak more about your experience with it? So what we talked about in slot was Mike Nelson's experience around the time that he did his PhD. And so when he was doing his doctoral work, he was kind of burning the candle at both ends. He's a highly sought out speaker on the health and wellness circuit. And so he would spend the weekends doing that stuff, spending the week working on his doctoral stuff. He was a professor at that point. And so there was a lot of things going on, right? And so he struggled. At the same time, I was using HRV for my workouts. And this was right after CrossFit. And, I was doing 3 on 1 off, and it wasn't working. It was really good for, staying weight stable and things of that nature. But what I always had like a little something, my back always felt a little tight, I was like everybody else, I was rolling around on foam rollers and things of that nature. And I came across a company called Movement Minneapolis, and the guy that is really into it. HRV is heart rate variability. Basically what it does is, normally you want your heart rate kind of, it's like an EKG, right? And you want your EKG to be relatively normal and stable. But when your HRV looks like this, and then, like this, and then like this, it points to the fact that you're not recovering appropriately. And so what I found is when I was doing 3 on 1 off, I wasn't recovering appropriately. And so I would have a lot of red days. And then I started to, take a couple days off, and I would work on my sleep a little bit better. And I really started to, pick apart all these little pieces, but mostly what I did was I changed my workout schedule. Now I will say this, I haven't done HRV recently, but I'm pretty sure that what I'm doing is much better than what I was doing, because I can tell you that my recovery is infinitely better. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But I went from basically all reds to all greens, and then if I had a green, I worked out. If I had a red, I didn't. That was sort of how it worked. And so I sort of had to figure out how the food component worked with that. And I was actually at that point trying to gain weight because I was trying to get up to the 181 class. So, at the same time I was allowing my body to heal, I was also allowing my body to kind of thrive and eat more and things of that nature. And so I did gain weight in that process. And it's sort of interesting as we're talking about Melissa's situation and her gaining weight. I was not of any opinion that was uninformed. I knew that if you weren't recovering properly, that food was a major component, right? I mean, I'm the Eat to Perform guy, so I should know this kind of stuff. And so I wasn't scared of putting on a little fat to allow my body to recover, because obviously I knew how to take it off. And I've obviously proven that I was able to take it off. At one point I was 190, now I'm 170. And I'm looking at doing a performance-focused fat loss phase. I have to tell you though, as it gets closer, man, I am panicking, April, just because I'm really enjoying my workouts right now, and I do feel recovered. So let's talk a little bit about that, what my workouts look like now, and why I feel so much more fresh than I used to, yet my work capacity is so much higher than it used to be. So basically I was 3 on 1 off. My gym was basically 20 to 30 minute WODs a lot of the time. So I got really good at 20 to 30 minute WODs. And when I say really good, I mean kind of marginal. I'm not a gifted CrossFitter. I'm not a gifted CrossFitter now. But I'm a much better athlete now than I was from a standpoint of the things I'm able to do. As an example, Friday, just walked out the door, ran 10 miles. Wasn't like super easy or anything like that, but also, in the past when I was deconditioned and I have run longer periods of time, I would cramp up. That did not happen. So I know that my conditioning has been pretty good. As an example, this week I'll do, I'm thinking of doing a half marathon row. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see. But I have a long endurance component every single week. I'd say a couple months ago it was every 2 weeks, and now my work capacity is up, so I've moved it up to once a week. And sometimes I vary it. Sometimes I row, sometimes I bike, sometimes but in general it's like 2 hours, right? At least now it is. It was an hour and then an hour and a half when I first started off. So obviously I progressed to this level. The other ways that I break it up is I have a couple days of HIIT training, 2 to 3 days. Usually on the day that I lift heavy, I also do some like HIIT work. It would be like an 8-minute Tabata or something like that. That's probably the best way to say it. And then I do some level of hypertrophy work and strength. And so I would say the 3 components are strength, long endurance, and CrossFit. So then you go, well, how does that allow you to recover? That sounds like a lot of work. Okay, so when you look at my workout on Friday, okay, I burned 4,000 calories, ate 4,000 calories. On Saturday, I ended up resting for the most part. I think I might have gone for a walk, but it wasn't like this. I basically just took my dog for a long walk, right? And then Sunday, instead, there was running programmed into the workout. Well, I ran on Friday, and even though it was short runs, I ended up rowing instead so I could recover. Instead of doing legs, I ended up doing bench press. And so, a lot of the things that we all knew before CrossFit, they still work, right? I mean, so if you allow your body to recover outside of, the HIIT training, that's really important. I think the other thing that's really important is when I do my long endurance component, my my heavy day, which is normally Tuesdays or Wednesdays, it's 4 days apart, 3 to 4 days apart. So I've allowed my body to appropriately recover. Now, what's interesting, in regards to this discussion with Melissa, and it would be interesting to have HRV. I do have an HRV on order, just so you guys know. I've been waiting for my amp strip to show up. They've been kind of pushing it back, and it's sort of frustrating me. But it's sort of a new thing to HRV that sits right below your rib. So I'm really excited about that. I have to say, I haven't totally figured out Mondays. Mondays is a rest day for me. And, sometimes that gets to be a little difficult. Last week, as an example, I ended up getting fairly aggressive, where my carbs were fairly low. That transferred over into a kind of bad, well, it wasn't a bad workout. It just didn't allow me, I was going for 440 and missed. But I missed at the top of my knees. And what was interesting about that lift was that a lot of people get really scared at top weights and they don't allow themselves to fight through it. And my wife was watching and she's like, holy cow, you must have did that for 5-6 seconds, And what I see a lot with my CrossFit brothers and sisters is they'll go to lift it and the bar won't move. And then they're like, okay, the bar wins today. And I've learned through my powerlifting experience that you can't let the bar win. You have to fight through it. You don't want to be silly about it, but you can sit there with with a heavy weight for a few seconds and fight through it. Obviously, you want to be smart about that. But I was happy that I fought through it before I ended up giving up, because a lot of the time most of my deadlifts fail below my ankles, right? They don't fail, above my knees. And so that's something to think about. Any thoughts on heart rate variability? I don't think you've ever really done too much with it.
I have never used it. I do find it very interesting. I've read a lot of Mike's stuff on it, and I think it's very cool. My thoughts, though, are that you need to sign up for half marathon, and we are all going to be rooting and waiting for you to do this. And also, you do not need to do another PFFL in September.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. I'll tell you guys right now.
You need some time.
I'm just going to tell you guys right now, I look ridiculous. I mean, my aesthetic is very good right now, and I'm not, 9% body fat. I'll just tell you that right now. Obviously, you saw that in the video, but I am more strong and more capable than I have ever been. I mean, I can do, into the mid-20s unbroken on pull-ups. Obviously, I can run 10 miles. What's funny about what April's saying is I can walk out the door and run 13.3 miles right now, and that's a half marathon. But for some reason, she thinks I have to sign up for a half marathon. If I run 13.3 miles, I'm just going to trust that all you guys believe me, So
no, you should do it just to show that basically you don't need to necessarily train specifically for that. You can still keep all of your strength and just the different variability, the variability of the things that you have with the heavy lifting and the CrossFit and the endurance and things like that. I think it would be very interesting, and I think you should do it.
Well, I think I probably will do it. I think it'll just happen naturally, though. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to end up being contrived. I can tell you guys this, cardio was a big component of my early journey. And so I don't dislike cardio. In fact, I like it a lot. I did do a lot of low impact stuff because of my feet. I broke 3 of my toes in a motorcycle accident, and then I have my ankle is fused to my bone. So like I have some flexibility issues there, and that sort of affects my gait and lots of other stuff. You know, a past version of me might have used that as an excuse. This current version, it just is what it is, right? And so I am really proud. I mean, a lot of times people don't think of those things when they get over those hills. I am sort of proud of the fact that I actually fought through that. But what I have learned, and this is really important, is that, you know, for me to just constantly beat on, you know, myself running doesn't make a lot of sense, and which is why I'll do rowing this week. And so having some level of variability there that allows your body to recover, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about recovery, you know. And so if I beat the hell out of myself, you know, next Friday, yeah, I might be able to do 11 miles, and yeah, I might be able to get a little bit better, but I'm not maybe allowing my body to recover. Now, of course, I'm going to go longer on the row because the row is easier. But I think that that's something for everyone to consider. And that's why, you know, when you train smarter, it's a lot better than training harder. Okay, so that was a long way to answer Chris's question. Will newbies get a chance to become a lifetime member and get the Wave Method book at a later date at a reduced rate? Yeah, I guess is the answer to that. We haven't really come up with a great plan for that because so many people bought the lifetime membership. The problem that you run into is that the book is probably going to run anywhere from $49.95 to $69.95, you know, depending on how it tests. And you know, for most people, they'd probably just pay the extra $30 so they end up being a lifetime member. But we do have plans for that. We'll have an opt-in form for everyone. And so that will allow you guys to be grandfathered in at the lower price. So if you're not ready today, not a problem. You'll have to the end of the year to buy it at $99.95. Shelly's saying, can you do a PFFL right away if you come from an overeating background? No, and here's the reason why you can't, okay? Because if you come from an overeating background and you get your wave numbers, you should lose weight, you should lose fat, right? People think that they came from an overeating background. So let's say that you think that you came from an overeating background and we give you your total daily energy expenditure numbers or your wave numbers, and you start to gain weight, then you weren't overeating, right? So, you know, if you were overeating and you get your total daily energy expenditure and we get you eating a moderate amount of carbohydrates and protein and stuff like that, you'll 100% lose fat. So there would be no need for a performance-focused fat loss period. Now, down the road, you might want to go, you know, your system is stabilized. Down the road, you go, you know what, I'd like to be a little bit more aggressive with my fat loss. Well, you'll be set up more perfectly than you ever were previously. So that is a good question, but if you come from an overeating background, your wave numbers should allow you to see some fat loss and some weight loss in the end. I hope that makes sense. Let's see. Stephanie's saying, what carbs do you recommend for someone who eats gluten-free, legume-free, nightshade-free, sugar-free, besides sweet potato? I would say sweet potatoes, white rice are good suggestions. Certainly ripe bananas, dates would be good options. When she's saying sugar-free, I mean, you know, fruit has sugar, so I don't, you know.
Well, I think that's natural sugar, so, you know, I wouldn't classify that. My opinion, plantains, the sweet potatoes aren't nightshades, so they would apply, assuming she likes them. And white rice, and of course you have like rice pasta, things like that. The rice paper wraps. You could do like tapioca, flour, stuff like that.
Yeah, those are all really good suggestions. So Marissa's asking, so I'm 280 pounds, I've been for the past 2 years while CrossFitting those 2 years, while I've lost a ton of inches, I haven't lost weight. What's the deal? P.S. I'm new to ETP form. Well, the deal is that your accumulated stress from your exercise isn't allowing for you to see benefit from the deficit that you're likely in, right? And that's why we posted that HRV post in Slot. So I don't know if you've seen that, but if you haven't seen it, try and go back and look for it and just use the key search word HRV. But here's what happens when somebody starts off with CrossFit and they struggle losing weight. And oh, by the way, you are common. You are not abnormal. That is exactly what happens for a lot of people, because what ends up happening, right, is a lot of people don't start off CrossFit without any dieting, right? They were already starting to do something. They were already eating less. So when they start CrossFit, it's sort of like throwing a match on the fire in terms of like overall stress and things of this nature. And it's sort of funny when you hear people talk about cortisol, because cortisol is going to be a big influencer as it relates to stress. Cortisol is positively affected when you start eating carbohydrates, so it will put out a little bit of the fire that's going on within your body. But one of the frustrating things for somebody that's in your situation is that there's probably a little bit of metabolic recovery that needs to happen. And so let's say that you've been doing CrossFit for the last couple of years and you've been, kind of eating mostly whole foods and things of that nature. What you will see is that, she's actually, Marissa, do you have any idea, the calories you were eating before you started to eat to perform? Because that would be kind of helpful. And I did the calculator when I first joined. 2 days later, I got my wave numbers, which are way higher. Which do I go with? Let's see. I did the calculator when I first joined. 2 days later, I got my wave numbers, which are way higher. Which do I go with? You go with the numbers that the coach gave you, right? Because as a team, we know things that, what you came up with on the calculator, that's sort of, we're obviously a little bit more sophisticated with that. Coming from 2,300, they'll have you work up to whatever, your numbers are supposed to be. Do you have any number? Do you have an example, Marissa, of what your numbers are supposed to be from the standpoint of your wave numbers once you graduate from 2,300 to whatever that top number is? Okay, so she's saying right above 3,000 calories. So basically, here's what happened. Okay. Also, do you have like a Fitbit or an activity tracker? Okay. What's your calorie burn on workout days compared to, and have you had it long is part of the question. Okay, so you've had it for 4 weeks. Okay. What's your average burn in those 4 weeks? Do you know? Saying usually about 3,000 burn on non-workout days. So what is your burn on workout days? 4,000 on workout days. Okay, so let's say that you're doing CrossFit and you're eating close to 2,000 calories. Okay, and then you're burning 4,000 calories on those days. And you're 280 pounds and you can't lose weight. Something at that point logically should go off in your head going, what's the problem? I'm at a deficit. I should be losing, basically 4 pounds a week, and I'm not losing anything. What's going on? Well, now we have a stress problem, right? And, as somebody who came from, an obesity background, right? The problem that we run into through dieting and kind of these binge and bust cycles, and actually, I don't know if you saw our video we did with Brad Dieter, but Brad Dieter. I don't know why I keep calling him Brad Dieter. But Brad Dieter is, I walked through the scenario of how I went from a 125-year-old, 17-year-old person to a 230-pound person with 48% body fat or whatever it was at that point, right? And that's the problem that we sort of run into, is that this eat less and do more ultimately sort of messes with your insulin resistance on the times that you're kind of in one of these frustrated cycles, and you just want to eat because you're starving, right? I mean, you're a person that probably has a lot of muscle on their frame. Obviously, your burns are going to be fairly high. Saying our body fat percentage is actually 29%, which is pretty healthy. I mean, like, um, I mean, what's your height, Marissa? So she's 59 inches, so she's 5'9". And so, she's obviously got a lot of muscle on her frame.
Holy cow, that's like 190 pounds of muscle. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's like amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. I wish I had 190 pounds of muscle on my frame. I would not, I guarantee you I would not care what I weighed. But yeah, I mean, essentially what you have to do is figure out some way to sort of bridge that gap. And obviously we're walking you up to 3174. But in reality, you need to be higher than that. I will say this, for someone with more fat to use, okay, which actually you're not in that stage. I mean, at 29%, you're actually pretty good. You're much better than most people would think in that scenario. But what you really want to do, the good majority of the time, is be closer to your Fitbit burn. So then when you actually diet, you're going to be more effective. My guess is that you're going to have to be a little bit okay with kind of maintaining 280 for a few months before you see a result. I think what's going to happen for you is that if you don't gradually go from 2,300 to closer to your Fitbit burn, you might not need to be 4,000 on workout days, but you might need to get closer to 3,500, right? That's going to allow your body to recover. And will you gain a little weight? Yeah, you will gain a little bit of weight. You'll probably go to 285, 290, something of that nature, but you'll be setting up your metabolism much better than you had previously, right? And so you'll actually end up seeing results, whereas you're sort of stuck right now at 280 wondering, hey, why can't I do it? Well, the reason why you can't do it is because you've got a fire going on in your body and you basically just keep pouring gasoline on it. And so you need to really take a look at that HRV post that Mike put out there, because you're a great example of an athlete that is sort of doing what they've been told. Everyone believes that that's the way. There's only one solution, right? There's you're either eating too much or you're not doing enough, right? Well, that's bullshit. There are a lot of people that are have affected their insulin resistance poorly. So I mean, I wouldn't say that we want to go like super carbs or anything like that, but you want to allow for a good amount of cycling so your body becomes more insulin sensitive, so it processes insulin better, right? You don't want to be working out 6 days a week, or if you do, you want to have a smarter approach to it. For an athlete your size, weightlifting is going to be, the priority. But I will say this, I am a strong believer in some kind of long endurance. Now, I do prefer long endurance for you that is more low impact, rowing and biking and things of that nature, or more like stationary bikes and things, stuff like that. But what you need is you need to get kind of closer to your burn, sit there for a couple months so we actually have a good cycle. And I'll tell you, there are a lot of people in your situation. I'm guessing that my internet is getting a little slow. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just Google. But there are a lot of athletes in your situation that have been kind of taught this, eat less, do more. And then, of course, we all have the moments of weakness where you're starving yourself and you're like, gosh, my body wants to eat, so I'm just going to eat, and then you feel bad about that. And then that sets off a guilt cycle and things of that nature. And frankly, a lot of people aren't very informed as it relates to athletes that carry a little bit more fat on their frame. Though actually, your fat is not high. I mean, you have a lot of muscle, and so that's going to benefit you long term. So take a look at that HRV, because I think that's going to be helpful. April, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I just want to make sure that things. All right, let's see. My computer is sort of locked up, and so I uh-oh, shoot. Let's see. Go to meeting, unexpectedly quit. Give me a second. I'm going to open up the, let's see. Hey guys, not sure what happened there, but my computer just shut down. Let's see. All right. I'm not sure if you guys can see me or not. There we go. Got you back. All right. All right, so let's see. Let me just get things situated here, you guys. Go to meeting just shut on me. And now I need to find where the questions are. Here we go. All right. Let's see. So Chris is saying, been doing ETP for about 4 weeks. I was low carb paleo for about 3 years. I noticed that I feel kind of tired after eating a lot of carbs. Does this go away after my body adjusts? I don't know that it goes away, but you become better at it, and what you find is you find that, when you use carbs at a certain period of time, that your body, resorts to it better. The interesting thing about what he's saying, though, April, that I think is sort of kind of being forgotten, is your body being tired is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right? And so, napping, things of that nature, those things tend to be a plus, right? But I do think that it's a matter of sort of, figuring out where you can position your carbs where it kind of fits with your lifestyle. Would you say that that's pretty close to what you found?
I actually absolutely agree. I experienced the same thing after my post-workout meal. Usually about an hour or two later, I get that I need a nap, but unfortunately that's usually around my meeting times. So I usually just have to have a carb snack. I'll do complex carbs with a little bit of fats and I'm perfectly fine. It picks me back up, but I think when you have the fast, a lot of people do the higher glycemic carbohydrates post-workout and use like Vitargo or a supplement, something like that. They have the insulin spike, and then when it drops, that's when they feel like they're tired, and they, doesn't feel normal to them, but it actually is normal.
I mean, I will say this, when we recommend 2-to-1 ratio, we're recommending it more as a management strategy. I'm going to tell you guys, I don't do that. I do what April just said. And so I don't get the spikes the way that you guys normally would. and I haven't seen like a negative thing. I mean, yeah, it probably from an optimization standpoint, maybe it cost me like a little bit of, recovery or muscle building or something of that nature. It just feels more right, right? And so, I think the other day, I ended up like if I get double chicken as an example, I'll have guacamole, at Chipotle, so like that would be a good example. But on Sunday, as an example, I was more hungry and I definitely felt like I needed more recovery. And so I just got triple chicken and no guacamole. So that's a little bit of the adjustment that I make when uh, when when that type of stuff is happening. So let's see. I don't know if I missed out on.
Our screen is completely frozen, but they can hear us. I got a text message stating so that it's very weird. Our screen is totally frozen, but they can hear us perfectly.
Yeah. Anyway, obviously we're having technical difficulties. It's past 8 o'clock. We might have some more questions. I'm just not seeing these questions. So I'm just going to shut it down and then we'll kind of go from there.
Good night, everybody.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Well, that was weird.